Did you know there was once a man, a single prophet, who stood alone against 450 powerful prophets of a false god? 450 against one. And what happened that day was so shocking, so terrifying, that fire literally fell from heaven in front of thousands of people. But here's the strange part. Most people know the miracle. Very few people know the real story behind it. And in this video you're going to discover 4 things. First, who this mysterious prophet really was. Second, what he dared to do that no one else had the courage to attempt. Third, how he made heaven answer with fire. And finally, the one part many people overlook, the part that explains why he did it at all. And that last one might completely change the way you see faith today. So stay with me, because the final truth in this story is something many people never notice. And before we begin, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, because you may never get another chance to uncover truths like this again. Now let's go back, thousands of years ago, to a time when a nation had forgotten its God. The people had turned away from truth. They followed a false god called Baal, a god they believed controlled the rain, the harvest, and the power of the sky. Hundreds of prophets served this false god. They were powerful, they were respected, they were supported by the king himself, and anyone who opposed them risked their life. But one man refused to stay silent, which brings us to the first question. Who was the prophet who dared to challenge them all? He wasn't a king, he wasn't a soldier, he wasn't even part of the royal court. He was just a prophet, a man who believed so deeply in the living God that he refused to bow to fear. And one day, he stepped forward with a challenge that stunned the entire nation. Imagine the moment. Hundreds of prophets gathered on a mountain, thousands of people watching, and one man stands before them and says something no one expected. If your God is real, let him answer by fire. The crowd went silent, because this wasn't just a debate. This was a confrontation between gods. Which brings us to the second question. What exactly did this prophet do? Instead of fighting with weapons, he proposed a test. 2 altars would be built, 2 sacrifices would be prepared, one for the false god, and one for the living God. But here was the rule. No one would light the fire. The God who answered by fire from heaven would prove himself to be the true God. The people agreed. The prophets of Baal went first, and what happened next is something almost unbelievable. They prayed, they shouted, they danced around the altar. Hour after hour passed, morning turned into afternoon. Their voices grew louder, their desperation grew deeper. They cried out for their God to answer, but nothing happened. No fire, no voice, no movement, just silence. And then something unexpected happened. The lone prophet began to speak again, and what he said shocked everyone. He mocked them. Maybe your God is busy. Maybe he's traveling. Maybe he's asleep. The crowd murmured. The prophets shouted louder. They screamed. They begged. They even cut themselves hoping their God would respond. But still, nothing happened. Which brings us to the third question. How did this prophet make heaven answer with fire? Now it was his turn. He rebuilt an altar that had been broken, 12 stones, representing the tribes of Israel. He prepared the sacrifice. But then, he did something that made the challenge even harder. He poured water over the sacrifice. Not once, not twice, 3 times. Water soaked the altar. Water filled the trench around it. Everything was completely drenched. Why would he do that? Because when the fire came, no one would be able to deny where it came from. Then the prophet stepped forward. He didn't shout. He didn't dance. He didn't beg. He simply prayed. A short prayer, a calm prayer, a confident prayer. And in that moment, something happened that no one present would ever forget. Suddenly, fire fell from heaven. Not ordinary fire, a consuming fire. It burned the sacrifice. It burned the wood. It burned the stones. It even dried up the water in the trench. The crowd fell to the ground in fear, and they cried out together, "The Lord, He is God." But here is the part many people miss. The final question. Why did this prophet do all of this? Was it to prove he was powerful? Was it to embarrass the false prophets? Was it to show off a miracle? No, it was something much deeper. He wanted the people to return to God. He wanted them to see the truth they had forgotten. He wanted them to understand that the living God was still real, still powerful, and still watching. And that day, an entire nation was reminded. But now let me ask you something honestly. After hearing this story, do you think there is anyone in this generation who has the kind of faith this prophet had? The kind of faith that can stand alone against hundreds and still believe that heaven will answer. Because that is the real question this story leaves behind. And maybe, just maybe, the answer is waiting in someone who is watching this video right now.